Welcome to episode 20 of Let's Rage Together, a podcast where two friends talk about the politics of total liberation and related topics.
We annihilated the world before your very ears.
You can't handle the truth.
Welcome to episode 20 of Let's Rage Together.
I'm Taryn.
And I'm Pete.
Today we're speaking to Banesa, who is the co-owner of the Nest Space in Johannesburg. It's an amazing black female-owned yoga studio, zero-waste vegan grocer and cafe, and it's the first of its kind. So welcome, Banesa.
Thank you for having me. This is an honor.
It's awesome to have you here.
Yeah.
And if we sound a little bit more calm than we usually are, it's because we just had an amazing yoga session with Banesa.
Yeah, followed by a really delicious smoothie.
Yeah.
What was in that smoothie?
So that was a banana smoothie, and it's so simple. You literally just get a blender and I use 3 frozen bananas, 2 cups of almond milk, a teaspoon of vanilla essence, a teaspoon of cinnamon, some of that macadamia and almond butter that you can get at Checkers, half a cup of rolled oats, and 4 blocks of ice.
It's delicious.
Yeah, it was amazing. But before we continue, for anyone listening, if you enjoyed the episode and you want to get hold of us, you can go to letsragetogether.co.za. You can also mail us on mail@letsragetogether.co.za, and you can find us on Instagram and Facebook with the handle Let's Rage Together Podcast. But yeah, we'll just jump straight into the interview, I think. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So Banesa, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So I am originally from Lesotho. And I grew up in Canada and England. So you know how the army brats, I was like an academic brat. So my parents were getting their masters and the doctorates, and they were fortunate enough to get scholarships that allowed them to travel with their family. And then I came back around like high school in Lesotho. And the first time I came to South Africa was at UCT when I was studying. And that's where I started my spiritual and yoga journey. I started with an organization called Art of Living that taught me the Sudarshan Kriya because I was suffering from anxiety and I was diagnosed with bipolar when I was 15 years old. My parents are doctors, so they kind of rubbish those claims, not because they don't believe in it, but it seemed like a bit of an easy answer because then they immediately wanted to medicate me. And that's how I moved into the spirituality because I really didn't feel good on the antidepressants and not as creative or as active. And so I started the Sudarshan breathing technique that seemed to balance my mind like no medicine had. And then that led to the yoga, hatha yoga that I started doing and the Vipassana meditation. And then I moved from Cape Town about 5 years ago. I have a background in music, so I'm a music promoter, so we do a lot of festivals and concerts. And coming to Joburg, it took a whole nother level. And it was a bit of a form of conflict for me because there was this yogi journey that I was on, waking up at 4 a.m., meditating, and then it's like sleeping at 4 a.m., partying and doing all of that. So that was a bit of a rough thing to find my way around. And I slowly have been able to, and I guess the Nest is that manifestation, and Organic Nomad, which is more of a consultation and coaching, wellness coaching company that I have. And that's allowed me to make that transition to just focus on a wellness journey.
That's how you met Banesa, right?
Well, no, we met through activism, but at the time when I met you, you were very much into music and events and stuff. So I was actually going to ask if that's still part of your life or not as much.
It's so weird because I worked for a hip-hop, owned a hip-hop collective called Cool Out. And I think people were astonished at how little of hip-hop I know, even though I was about it. So I feel like the music industry is something that has pulled me in as opposed to the other way around. And so no matter how I try to leave it, I always get pulled into it. So I formally retired, I guess, from it early this year. But when Tash Sultana and them came through and needed a tour manager, I was like, of course, So I don't think, and I've got a lot of skills over the last 10 years that I've built from them. So I don't think it'll be anything that I'll give up, but I think it's something that I now need to form to sort of metamorphosize into something new. So at the Nest Space, we have music events like WM sessions with Wandile Mbambeni and shows and all of that. So I think it will always be a part of my life.
That's
cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you've lived in South Africa, Lesotho, Canada, and England.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, Lesotho is a kingdom as far as I know.
Yeah.
And it's like a small country inside of a country.
Yep.
So it's a tiny country inside of South Africa, bordered by mountains
Yeah.
in KwaZulu-Natal.
Yes.
I'm not sure what's around the other side.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So it's a
that's
free
cool.
state and then the Eastern Cape as well.
Yeah.
So we're bang in the center and we're the only completely landlocked country.
Yeah.
So others are landlocked by at least 2 or 3. We're fully landlocked by South Africa, which makes it it's been an interesting trip because legally I am exactly the same as any foreigner. You know, I need a visa to be here, you need to apply and all of that. But it's also weird because though culturally it blurs into one another. So we're very different and we've got a high nationalist attitude in Lesotho because that's the only way we can thrive. It's the only way we can survive. We have to believe that we're a country. We have to have a high sort of sense of pride. But then also when you realize how many people in Lesotho are trying to get into South Africa just for economic reasons, it also is just a weird balance.
Well, yeah, it just shows how strange like the ideas of like borders and nations
Arbitrary
are.
borders,
You have to
exactly.
get a visa to be in South Africa, but you are in South
Already.
Africa. You know what I mean? It's like super weird.
It's bizarre.
But anyway.
It's bizarre.
So how, why, and when did you go vegan and find veganism?
So I went vegan about, I think, 3 to 4 years ago. I think it's 3 years ago. And how I was vegetarian for the longest time. And I believed that, you know, I'm doing this because it was always for the animals. I just didn't believe that an animal needed to die in order for me to eat. But I justified the vegetarianism because I was like, cows aren't dying and, you know, this so I'm okay.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah, I was also a vegetarian like 10 years before. I was vegan.
Looking back now, like
Exactly. It's just like, and the dissociation that we're capable of is actually quite sophisticated. And then it's only when I got to Joburg and I met vegan people and still I was just like, ooh, that's a little extreme. And then watching What the Health turned it to another level. Like, I think I was already going vegan, but that's when it was solidified. Only because health is in especially the Black community, we're not very much about animals in terms of our relationship to animals is very different from other cultures. But health is something that's definitely ravaging our culture, whether it be cancer that has newly come in the last 10 years. We're only finding out about it now, and obesity and all of that. So that's when they made the correlation between diabetes and dairy. My mom suffers from type 1, the worst type of diabetes, and we've always believed it's sugar, and we've always believed, you know, she just needs to, you know, all her books from her doctors, it's high intake of dairy, high intake of chicken and poultry and fish. And so that got me mad. And I feel it's sad because I don't know if I hadn't watched something that had been so personal, if it would have been such a move for me. So I don't know if everyone needs to go through that. But for me, it definitely, I was left crying. And if my mom had died, which there have been many times where she nearly came close to, I would have destroyed the whole world. Like, literally, I would have, because that was such a lie I felt that we had been told.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
that's when I went vegan, and I haven't looked back since in that way.
No, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite unique because a lot of people who focus on the health aspects or advantages of veganism,
Yeah.
it's very self-centered.
Yes.
And for you, it was something personal because of someone close to you.
Definitely.
And I think that's quite
Yeah,
unique.
that's true. It's like health, but not selfish. Yeah.
Yeah, the correlation, I think what I'm in the vegan community, what I'm absolutely so grateful for is the uprising and documentation of this journey. And we're no longer classified as, you know, these wild hippies just trying to live out there on the side. You know, it's actually like with the Game Changers and What the Health and Knives Over Forks and all these documentaries, it's really showing that it's a very relatable and very applicable into your own life. So, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what does veganism mean to you, and how have your views changed over time since you first went vegan?
So I think veganism for me, I see it as a movement, like it's a political movement. And I think when people ask about my form of activism, I feel like vegan is all encompassing for all the other activism. It's slowly changed though, because when I thought it was just, okay, I'm not eating dairy and animal products, but, you know, let's keep it moving. But don't touch my leather shoes, my, you know, the brands that I'm working with. And with time, it's just been, you realize that there's levels to this dissociation. You know, you keep convincing yourself. You're like, okay, well, I'm vegan, but you know, I love my shoes and I love this. And then with time, you start to realize that if you care about the animals, you should care about the people. Where does clothing come from? How is it made? And so, yeah, it's definitely a manifestation of consciousness for me.
So you see it as very much interlinked with other issues of justice as well.
Oh, hell, I find you can't separate the two. You can't separate the two whatsoever.
Yeah, that's great. We fully agree with that.
Yeah.
Then what role does yoga play in your life, and how do you think yoga and veganism like complement each other and intersect?
Yeah, so I like that because it is a trick question for me, because maybe it's just my ego that like has chosen to be like, yeah, it was my mom and everything, but it came from all sides, because even spiritually that led to my vegan journey, because I can't hold these two polar thoughts or beliefs. When you're in a spiritual practice, it's really about becoming one. And so harming anybody, contributing to any harm is completely against the spiritual practice that I do. And that's how it tied in. And even the yoga came to reinforce that. I'm more aware of my body because of yoga. So I know when I'm about to get a cold 2 weeks before, you know, just from a little tickle. And that's because I'm so in tune with it. And that's with the food I eat. I can tell, even if you gave me dairy instead of soy milk, I'm going to be able to feel it. It's not even just a mental, intellectual. I can feel it in my stomach. And I think that connection with the body is what yoga has done. And that's what veganism is. It's got a strong connection with how you feel.
And also, I guess there's the yogic concept of ahimsa, right?
Yes.
Of like
yes.
not harming any being.
Definitely.
I always find it really confusing when people talk about ahimsa but aren't vegan.
Yeah.
So it's so weird, isn't it? It's the same with the vet who isn't vegan, veterinarian who isn't
Yes,
vegan.
exactly.
You know, I guess the way because I was angry for a long time. Like I was the typical angry vegan lashing out. And I guess for me, it's the concept of realizing that I didn't wake up this way. And it took time for me to start learning and unlearning things. And I've got to give everybody the respect and freedom to be able to make it at their own journey. So that's the only thing I can say to myself in order to keep moving. Otherwise, I dissociate myself from people and things. And I don't think that's also the way to go.
I think what you said was also very true, and probably rings true for a lot of people about it not being specifically one thing.
Yeah.
Like I think for a lot of us, there were probably someone said something here,
Yeah.
there was a documentary here,
Yeah.
this here, and then for you, your mom's health was just like the tipping point of
Exactly.
like, wow, these people lied, this
Yeah.
industry lied to us so hard, like,
Yeah.
and then tipping point vegan.
No, but that's also the same thing with spirituality, and my problem with that as well is because, as you're saying, Ahimsa, because they push a vegetarian diet, you know? So I'm like, but that doesn't make sense, you know? Like, I go to my Vipassana retreats and they've got milk, and I'm just like, but I'm pretty sure the Buddha wouldn't be about this right now. But it's also then, you know, realizing, like, if it's not hurting the animal, because I do think it's possible to milk a cow without hurting it and all of that. So I guess that's where they're coming from. But if you buy clover milk, then you kind of, that's not the same thing.
I mean, I met people when I was in India who keep cows. It's a kind of a sect of Hinduism or something.
Yes.
And they don't separate the calves from the mothers, and they milk the cows, but it's very small amounts and for like sacred purposes and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to comment on that because like coming from a privileged like white perspective, I don't understand those kind of cultures and stuff.
Yeah.
But my problem came in where people who just buy dairy in the supermarkets use them to justify their consumption of dairy. And it's like, but you aren't a part of that sect, you know? So I do get what you're saying. Like, also that changed my perspective a lot.
Yeah.
Like, there are people, they see cows as like extremely holy and sacred. And when they milk them, it's like, they don't close them up.
Yeah.
They like, gentle and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say like, oh, I endorse that.
Exactly.
But I can't also condemn it without being like, you know, actually pretty racist or culturally insensitive.
Yeah. It's a toughie in that way, because I think everyone needs to be aware of their privilege, because as the awareness that you have is also, I can't sit here and pretend that I was born in a shack in the rurals. I've been extremely privileged as a Black person, and still having to put that into account in the sort of choices I make. Like, even it being veganism, they automatically disassociated to me having been overseas, even though there was nothing vegan about me being in England or Canada, but I can understand that being able to have my mind shaped in a way that I'm open to certain information is a privilege I can't take for granted. So I tread softly, but I can flare up when I think there's the times and moments for it, Yeah.
So what inspired you to open the Nest Space, and can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, the Nest Space was a brainchild of mine and Anesu's, but mine wasn't in the space in Queenside, the Nest. It was just, obviously, in most yogis, they want to have a studio and make it self-sufficient. But Anesu really took the plunge of being crazy enough to get a space by herself and say, okay, I'm going to start it. She came up with the name, which is really weird, as I'll tell you later. And a month into her opening, friends of ours, mutual friends, so we went to UCT together, but we never met. But we had very close mutual friends who were like, you guys need to meet. You need to meet. And I was just like, come on, guys, this is so cliche. Like, two Black yogis need to meet. Like, it really... and so we were a bit like, yeah, we'll do it, cool. And then we had one friend, Liz, who's in New York, who was gun-ho about it. And she created a whole meeting and didn't end up showing up. And Anissa and I met up, and it was like, there's something extremely bizarre about our interaction. Like, there was a time after we met, 2 days later, a month later, she was picking up keys for me, and we showed up in exactly the same outfit. Now, I'm not talking about black jeans and a white t-shirt. I'm talking about a distinct green long sweater that comes to your ankles, gray tights, a gray t-shirt. And it was like, whoa, this is bizarre. And even with the Nest, it's Anesu. The Nest is in there. Banesa, the Nest is in there. So it's so weird, because even people who work with us and love us, and we hope so, and know us as separate individuals, confuse us, because they'll be like, oh, I got the keys from Banesu. And like, that's like a thing that everyone now says, Banesu. They just put us all into one thing. So yeah, so I met her, and and I was doing entrepreneurship incubation with the Mandela and Obama Fellowship. And so we'd spoken before show, and I was more like, yeah, I can help. Let me see how I can come on board, maybe as like a branding or whatever. But when we did meet, I realized that Anissa really just jumped in. She had she was just like, I'm just going to fly. I need whatever help I can get. And then I think a partnership became very clear. And a month afterwards, we came together, and the whole, our magic is she builds and I share it. So I'm good with the PR, bringing people, branding. She's good with the decor and creating a space, and it's just been an incredible partnership.
Yeah. Shout out to Anessi. She couldn't make it.
Yeah. She just came from Thailand, so I think I told her when she landed, and then she had other plans, unfortunately.
So what made you decide to combine the yoga studio with a cafe and zero waste shop as well?
Yeah, so Anissa and I are both very spiritual. And yoga is an offering of spirituality for us that shouldn't be confused with religion. And so spirituality with a price tag is suspect for me in all ways. But obviously we've got rent to pay, so you've got to pay for classes. But we never wanted this to be a money-making thing. And if we want to make this money-making, then the classes would be twice the amount. But then we do need to make it sustainable. So then that's when we started, okay, how do we then open up our offerings so that everything can sort of play together and help each other grow? And so that's when we realized when people came, they would be hungry. So the Greenside Cafe, like after our class, would go there and all our customers were sitting there, or downstairs would be having coffee. So we knew, okay, people clearly want to eat afterwards. The cafe came about, and then the zero waste grocer has just been a dream of ours for the longest time, just because, as you said, being veganism opens you up to, why am I vegan? Because of the climate is one of the reasons as well. This one is, it's so trippy for me to wrap my head around the climate situation and how everyone's so blasé about it. Like, you look crazy being like, no guys, like literally there's a fire coming right at us. And so I definitely needed to be doing something that at least somehow shows that we're trying to do something about it. And the zero waste store, every store needs to be zero waste, to be honest.
Yeah, it's great. It's like very pioneering.
Yeah.
But also, you're right. like it shouldn't be an exception. You know what I mean? Like you said, like the house is on fire, the fire's coming,
And everyone's so
and
chill.
everyone's like,
Oh, chill.
Fine.
They're like, is that really fire? I think it's like a hologram or something.
maybe we should just think about banning straws.
I've stopped straws. I think I'm good.
So you briefly mentioned it, but how do you don't have to define yourself,
Yeah.
but how do you view yourself, like in terms of religion and spirituality? Like how do you identify?
I definitely identify as esoteric, and I think that's just mainly spiritual. I come from a family where my dad's a scientist and my mom's a psychologist, and my mom is very much about the Black movement and Black power. So the idea of her, she traces down and goes, the idea of Jesus coming through is very offensive for her as this white man with blue eyes coming to save
from the Middle East. From the Middle East.
from the Middle East,
Yeah, blue
but
eyes.
looks Swedish.
Yeah.
Comes through and like saves us because we were nothing without the savior is extremely problematic for her, and so she's very ingrained in that, works on ancestors, and she did her PhD actually on traditional African healing and the correlations with psychology. So she was very much anti the church from the get-go, but respectful. She's still a Black Musota woman. So my dad and my grandmother are from the church, but my dad went the science route, so he was quite bored by it. So I remember when we were young in England, my mom was very clear, I'm not taking these children to church, but you're more than welcome to. So my dad tried all of like 2 times to take us to church, and then afterwards he's like, no way, this is too much work. And then my brother actually ended up weirdly being a Christian. Not your normal one, but a self-taught Christian who sort of interprets it in his own way, and his girlfriend is. I go wherever anyone invites me. So I've been to many churches, I've been to the mosque, I've been the Baha'i faith. I love it just, for me, religions should be just different languages in order to speak to the source. So I don't mind learning a different language, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not my mother tongue. And that's how I sort of identify spiritually.
Cool.
Yeah.
I also, grew up Christian, and then since then, since I like left that,
Yeah.
I've been quite a like hardened atheist, and that I think can also kind of go to like a fundamentalist extreme.
Yeah.
But I've also met people like yourself who don't identify with a particular religion and kind of leave it,
Yeah.
There's been other people in history, for example, like Leo Tolstoy.
Yeah.
He regarded himself as like a Christian anarchist.
Yeah.
And it was more like focused on like the life of Jesus
Yeah.
than the religion of
Got
Christianity.
you.
But I understand like and appreciate where you're coming from and what
Yeah.
you're saying. And I've
Yeah.
met great people who have a form of spirituality, but still see the problem with institutionalized religion.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where I feel like that for me is like just being in nature is when I get the closest kind of feeling.
True.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's also, for me, it kind of boils down to everyone needs some kind of sense of meaning.
Yeah.
And for some people, that's religion. For some people, it's spirituality. For some people, it's nature. And even atheists like us, like you mentioned, being in nature, it does have that kind of spiritual aspect to
Yeah,
it, that sense of meaning, that sense of like just awe with what is, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is important. So I think it's kind of a human trait that we all need.
100%. And that's also what I found is, for me, I feel like everyone is saying the same thing. Whoever I speak to, they're all saying the same thing. So I don't understand how you are differing. And
Yeah.
I think it's more, just going on with what you're saying, Taryn, about meaning. For me, I understand it as connection. I feel it's just an idea of connection, and how you do it. You can find the most staunch atheist, but who's doing the most incredible humanitarian work, and that's their form, that's their religion. And I think it's just connectedness, and then everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So what are your views on Black veganism specifically, and on veganism in the South African context?
So that's
It's a
so
big
good.
question.
Yeah, it is, but
No
it's so
pressure.
cool. But I learned a lot about that from the demos we used to do when you were running Anonymous for the Voiceless, because I was the first. I would witness. I would usually be 1 or 2 or 3 of Black people there, but we're majority speaking to Black people, right, in Rosebank or wherever we are, and I'd see that. There was one time that one of my comrades, if you'd call them, was approaching like a Black group of people and was like, would you hurt your dog? Would you eat your dog? Then why would you eat this cow? And I'm like, these people don't care about animals in that way. Like, they're a bit neutral about animals. I think black people can be extremely cruel to animals, but they get majority, they just don't care. They see them as another, just doing their own thing. How you're really going to hit them is bringing it to, when I speak to them in the outreach, I'm like, so let's talk about these diseases that have just come up in our community. We've got cancer, we've got these growths, we've got all of this. Where was it there before? No. Do you understand the meat that we're eating and the food? And that's when you've got them, because they actually already know this. They know this. They're like, exactly, because when they dumped that chicken in South Africa, that wasn't suitable for America. And they didn't dump it at Pick and Pay and Woolies. That went to the no-name brands in the township and all of that. Yeah. And they noticed that. And also they are the, like, poor black people are the queens and kings of free range and healthy, because their chickens run in the yard, so they can taste the difference. And that's when you start to get a debate. So for me, when I approach black people, it's mainly because of health reasons. And also with what you were saying about like the Hindi sect, it's difficult for me to make a judgment on a culture, because yes, when we do slaughter animals on celebrations, and I don't partake in that, that's my choice. But the sacredness of it, the respect around it, and the fact that the lack of waste, they don't just take the ribeye and then throw everything else, the skin, everything is used. And I'm like, okay, it's not for me, but I can sort of see that. So, and it's also just, it's a hole that I'm not yet prepared to go down. And I think maybe in time I will be able to. But right now I can only firmly stand on health reasons for black people.
Well, I think that's, especially in the white communities, is so extremely hypocritical. Yeah. Because like they'll see someone, a group of people doing a sacrificial slaughter or something. Yeah. And again, I'm not going to say like I condone anything. And yeah, it's pretty brutal to see. I've seen stuff on traveling as well and in South Africa. But I can respect that they're at least open and honest about it. And the white people getting upset about it are like, oh, look, how can they do that?
So they go get
but then
it's
like, what is happening behind the walls of the slaughterhouse?
Exactly.
Every day to billions of animals, And like, it's, to me, that is like endlessly frustrating that you can judge another culture, probably responsible for way less deaths than you.
Exactly.
So
that's also part of my angry face. I left the vegan essay. Well, no, I stayed on the vegan essay Facebook page, but I muted it for a long time because I was a pariah to a lot of people on that group. And it was because I saw people using veganism as a sort of an excuse for being racist. Definitely. Or big, and there was a lady who commented and she was like, oh, I was driving past Deep Sloot and I saw some black women selling chickens in cages and I wanted to run them all over. Woo! I was just like, hold up. Yeah. You're a vegan who wants to run over not only chickens but humans as well. Like it was just, and that's the only time, because I think I was a bit idealistic when I first came into the veganism world. I was like, oh, and then when I started seeing this, it got me really angry. And so it's taken a long time to also choose my battles. And also there's just no point sometimes in engaging on a certain level with somebody who's just committed to misunderstanding you.
Exactly. And I was going to mention as well, it's not just like black people specifically, it's always the other. So you have the evil Chinese with the dog festival, and it's so bad to eat dogs.
Exactly.
Like it's just everywhere. It's also what you said of, when we used to do Anonymous for the Voiceless demos, it was one of the problems that we still have with that organization is they have this way to do outreach. So when you read the outreach manual or whatever booklets on outreach, they will say that like, oh, compare the cow you eat to a dog and whatever. And it's so like context deaf.
Exactly.
That also one time at Wits I was there and there was like this white guy who went up to this obviously very smart third year Marxist black student. And he's talking about like these basic like outreach recycled vegan arguments, and the guy is just slamming him with these questions to the point where not that I was like better of it, but I felt at least I was listening to him. And then I joined in the conversation, and then he started listening when I was talking about yeah, but what about colonization?
Yeah.
And what about the animals that white settlers brought here that you eat as part of it, but it's from colonization,
That's a
not
great
from black
argument.
cultures and stuff. So, and then he was more open, you know.
Yeah.
But if you're going to just go with this like Australian rule book
Yeah.
of how to do outreach in a country whose context you don't understand, of course that stuff is going to happen.
Definitely.
Just like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Never mind the fact that the dog argument is actually super speciesist, because if you speak to most white people about dogs,
Yeah.
they love their dogs, but they're exploited pets that have been like specifically bred to be
Yeah.
there for like entertainment.
It's
So
yeah.
you're asking them to love other animals the way they love dogs, but they're actually exploiting dogs as
Exactly.
well. So it's pretty speciesist
That's
anyway.
true. That's
From
really
puppy
true.
mills and
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think you made a good point about starting with health, and that's something that I generally won't start with in general. And I try to be more ethics focused.
Yeah.
But you do have to meet people where they're at, and like you said, it comes down to very much racism as well. Actually, to not realize that, like, if you're speaking to someone who is facing their own oppression on a daily
Yeah.
basis, and you're going to tell them, just put that on the back burner for a second and think about these animals and their oppression.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to get through to them.
Exactly.
And so there, I agree with you that health is a much better angle, because it is important, firstly, but it is also like very much comes down to, you know, racist capitalist institutions
Exactly.
that, like you said, the reject chickens where do they get taken? To the poor communities.
Yeah.
It's racism,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that point as well.
Also, like T mentioned earlier, there's a lot of vegan activists at the moment, much more from what I can tell, specifically white vegan activists who seem to be pushing this like very much for the animals,
Yeah.
like rhetoric. And as a black vegan woman living in this like white supremacist capitalist patriarchy that we have, you obviously have a better understanding of these intersections of different forms of oppression, and also because of where you've lived and traveled and everything, and social injustice than some people who have varying degrees of privilege in society. So what do you think about like this like, oh, veganism is just for the animals, and separating animal rights from all the other fights for equality and justice, like feminism and like racial justice and everything?
I love that question already is the answer. Like that you've highlighted on things that I think people seriously need to get through their head. Like I don't understand how you can be for the animals, like that is speciesism in a way, but be completely oblivious to corrective rape that's happening in the LGBT community, or you know what's going on in the environment, or what's going on with black people. So when after the interactions I was having on social media with these people, I realized that it also was an opportunity for me to learn, because I realized I'm not a vegan, I'm an intersectional vegan. And that was a distinction I was very happy, because what was also weighing heavy on me is like, I can't be put in the same category as these people. I just can't, because we don't have the same values. So there needs to be some sort of distinction. And you know, I had an ex-boyfriend of mine who was didn't work for obvious reasons, as you'll see. He was on my case because he was like, why you keep fighting for everything? You know what I mean? Like, you really need to choose. Like, you can't save the whole world. And I'm like, why would I need it? For me, it absolutely fits in on all levels. Like, you can't be a vegan activist and then beat your wife when you get home. How does that even make sense? I think the rhetoric of for the animals, it's for life. Let's just talk about life.
And we are animals.
And we are animals as well, you know. And I think that's when we get to it. I think the argument, the narrative for the argument is because we need there's urgency around that, because there's a mass world genocide happening. But I think the core of it is we are about freedom. And when you talk about freedom, then we get to open up our movement. I was at an LGBT activist screening at AFTA, and it's about a Nigerian woman who's come out and is living openly, and that's another woman in Kenya as well. And for there, you know, we take for granted in South Africa how accepted it is, and there it's like death penalty for them. And after the panel discussion, one of the ladies was like, you know, how do we get people interested in our movement as LGBT? You know, like, surely we can get more people. And I'm like, how are you interested in any other movements? You know, like, I think it's this idea of this is our fight.
Yeah.
And you join on that one. But if we get to the core of what we're saying, which everyone just wants freedom. and love and a right to live. If we do that, then we are all one movement. And then these billions or millions of sects and activist groups suddenly become a huge force to be reckoned with. But that's the whole thing, and it ties in with my spirituality, with my political beliefs. There are forces and energies around that are committed to separation, committed to believing that there's the other, because they're in the minority. So if we realize that we're not and come together, they're abolished in seconds. And so that's that, and I think people need to wake up to that fact. And anything that creates a separation, even veganism, me saying I'm vegan and you're not, creates a separation that I'm like, no. I just eat. When people want to go vegan, I'm like, it's not about giving up anything. Add more plant-based foods. And then I believe so much in it, you will start to feel what your body wants, as opposed to let go of this, don't do that. And that's the sort of narrative that we're being fed. So yeah, I think being intersectional is extremely important in all forms of activism. So you can be an intersectional LGBT activist, an intersectional veganism, but what that intersectional word, activist, we're all one. And when we start marching, that's how we show up for each other. And that's the world I hope to see.
Yeah, we totally agree. You know, that the term intersectionality came from Kimberly Crenshaw, the black feminist. And so now that's why we actually ended up distancing ourselves from Anonymous for the Voiceless and some of these prominent vegan activists, because they are explicitly anti-intersectionality, and we like you don't really get it, because it's like, well, we're against oppression, you're against oppression, why don't we be against oppression?
How does that not make sense?
So
well, you summed it up really well, and their argument is really nonsensical. They're saying, all these intersectional vegans are making things so small because, if you have to be anti-racist and you have to be this and you have to be this, there's going to be like 5 people doing vegan activism. And I'm like, no, how about we all just care about collective liberation and, like you say, fight together, Because if it is just seen as one big movement for justice and social change, then all these small pockets, most people care about something. Most people care about something related to social justice that's very, very important to them.
Yeah.
And if they can just extend that to all of the other movements and we all just support each other, like you said, we all have one massive social justice movement. And then...
But I think the confusion for some people comes in is they're like, how can I be an LGBT activist and a vegan activist and everything? And it's like we've pointed out before how Roger Yates talks about veganism is, non-human animals are the focus, but the scope of vegan is massive.
Exactly.
And it is possible to care about a lot of stuff while focusing your attention on some things. So like you and Anesu focus on, your spirituality, veganism, zero waste.
Yes.
You would be thinly spread if you were also trying to run a community center and a shelter and a whatever. But you still care about those things.
And if the opportunity arises, the answer is very clear. Like if the opportunity arises where we in our lane are able to assist those movements, without a doubt we're there. And that's my problem, is the resistance when it's so easy for you to help these other organizations and you choose not to, using your activism as an excuse. So I'm already vegan, so I've done enough, and it's like, you haven't even begun.
But you find most of that rhetoric comes from people who are extremely privileged and experience none of it themselves.
Yes.
So.
And I think it's also, as you're saying, the focus for Anissa and I being veganism and zero waste is part of the privilege, because we aren't worried about the oppression that comes with not getting your school fees paid or not having food to eat or, not being safe as an LGBT woman walking down the street. So yes, I can understand why that's not a prominent sort of catalyst for you. But I think that's why I think a lot of people, especially in the space, allows conversation. Like what we're doing, not as cool, but still allows conversation, because people are starting to get it. We're not those people who are just waiting on the sidelines to throw red paint on your fur jacket. Like it gets beyond that, and you will feel we all have there's a level of understanding that I think we can all meet at.
And I think you made a really key point that you can be focused on one form of activism, but the key thing is when opportunity arises, saying yes and actually having the back of the people who need it in the movement that need it. If you're not doing anything and there's an action happening for a cause that you don't dedicate every day of your life to, just go support it. It's not that hard. It doesn't mean you have to switch your whole life focus to just
but it comes from scarcity. It's an idea of scarcity on every level, because you think you only have so much to give, and so me giving to the vegan movement and giving is just going to take away from the LGBT movement. You don't know it's actually going to add, because they're vegan LGBT people, you're actually creating more. And again, it comes back to that whole rhetoric of separation and not having enough, lack of abundance. And that's something that we really want to shift in people's minds.
Yeah, and I think it's cool. You know, you said you went to an LGBT conference or talk.
Yeah.
So we were recently told we were hypocrites because we are vegan, but join, say, like the anti-xenophobia marches through Hillbrow or something. And someone told us recently that we're hypocrites because we march alongside non-vegans. And I'm like, yeah,
what?
You should see Banesa's face right now.
That's
crazy. So I think that what they say is so skewed because it's very much more likely that someone speaks to you at the LGBT conference, you relate on LGBT issues, and then they find out you're vegan and they're like, oh, that makes sense.
Exactly.
You know, just like we have friends, say our friends who run the commune in town, who are involved in like leftist black struggle and anarchist stuff, and they don't first like put out vegan. They're involved in a lot of social justice struggle, and then as soon as people find out they're vegan, they're like, oh, that makes sense.
Exactly.
You're fighting against depression. You're vegan. So I think that's like the way it should be seen, but we just didn't get this like weird criticism.
But that's the same thing in every other movement. So then when I'm walking in a vegan march, then I get, oh, you're going to march for the white folk, but when we do something, where were you at the Alex? And it's like, those white folk chances are going to help in that thing, you know? So it's, again, as you're saying, it's really about the hypocrisy that overwhelms me. And that's where, for a long time, my anger lay, is when people... Because I'm like, my jaw dropped because I'm like, the audacity. Okay, sit and just watch and like roll your eyes. But to actually come up and speak and say that, I had a bit of a, I don't know if you guys, I don't think you guys are in the Vegans of Gauteng WhatsApp group.
Not the WhatsApp group. I think we were in the Facebook group or something.
There's a WhatsApp group and, you know, I'm just minding my own business and some guy posts a video of a lady in a burqa. And she's got bikinis and, you know, she's doing a bikini fashion show. And, you know, there's a comedy like, ha ha ha, use your imagination, but not too much, ka ka ka. And I'm not Muslim, you know, I'm like, oh, that's not funny, but it's not offensive as well. I just thought that was lame, but keep it moving. But what did catch my attention is the number of people that started leaving right after that. So then I'm like, okay, forget about the joke. Can you see its effect though? Clearly there are people who are offended by this. And I think from your point of view, let's try stick to topics that involve veganism. I mean, that's why are we now going, what's that got to do with veganism? And the amount of spiritual and vegan whitewashing I got, we are all one, it's just a joke, if you're offended, your ego is too high. And I was just like, so that gets me angry.
Yeah, big time.
Because then now I'm like, woo! And also like, you know, be happy, be easy. I'm like, then why do you have the capability of just saying, oh, you're right, I hope I didn't offend someone, I'm sorry. So simple. Isn't that an egoless thing? Instead of continually pushing your point that, no, we're too sensitive, and if we really want a nation where all one should be able to joke about each other's cultures, and I'm very, it took a second, but then the group really did swing to the side of, guys, this is not okay. Why is this even a topic? And then that's why I was like, okay, we're on common ground, and I'm learning, I'm building my life where I don't know if this is me just being avoidant, but that's not the kind of energy I'm trying to be about.
Exactly.
So I'm not trying to have conversations with people like, that's where you're at. I'm pretty sure there are people for you, but that's not me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's great that you noticed people leaving the WhatsApp group immediately. And there's this kind of arguments recently that's coming up in the problematic people we're speaking about, who talk about, say, oh, like you're it's not inclusive to tell racists you can't come join the vegan movement. And we're like,
because we're making the movement too small when we say we don't welcome racists, basically.
or say like men's rights activists, whatever the fuck that is.
Yeah.
But like they're saying, if you need to have everyone involved, and it's like, basically the same thing is going to happen. What happened in the WhatsApp group? You're going to have these people arrive, and all of these people leave. That's
exactly, and that's the whole thing. That is pure gaslighting.
Yeah.
Literally on its highest level, because you start to question yourself. Because yes, on some weird plane, we do want everyone involved, and we shouldn't be discriminatory. and I'm about not kicking people out, but how can I allow a racist or a homophobic or a sexist be a part of this? Am I not now displaying the very qualities that I'm going against? And now you second guess yourself, and that's what I get offended about. When you start making me question that, then it's personal.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I either back away or we're having a showdown. Yeah.
So we spoke a little bit about health earlier, and health and wellness seems to be quite central to a lot of your life, actually.
Yeah.
So do you have any tips for us as unhealthy trash vegans?
We just eat fries and burgers.
Just like general tips for like improving health and wellness from your own experience.
Yes, I think I am the wrong person for that. Because when it comes to, I'm lucky because of the yoga and the spirituality, which focuses on whole foods and all of that. It's just coincidence because I'm not that kind of vegan. I tell everyone I actually don't like vegetables, and that blows everyone's mind away, which also is a form of my activism, because then they start to realize, because then they're like, then what do you eat? And I'm like, and obviously, technically, yes, potatoes and all of that are vegetables, but I'm talking about like broccoli and asparagus and green beans. I can't do that. And I feel like people feeling like everyone who's vegan is healthy is a huge misconception. Yeah. That's why I'm always like, I'm an ethical vegan. As much as my when I do my activism, I go from a health point of view. I'm more about ethics, but I am lucky in terms of the lifestyle I have, because I also am I'm aware of, the pesticides. For me, it's not, I guess having health, you need to be either unhealthy or in order for it to be a cause. And I've been very lucky, I'm quite small framed and I haven't had big diseases. So health is almost, I take it for granted. So I feel like that's why it's not been a push for me. And mostly for me, it's just about the toxins in food, and the ethics around the food we eat, and how we sort of have been, I can go, I've tried very hard. I'm glad Ines is not here, because she should have warned you about my conspiracies, everyone rolls their eyes at me. A friend of mine was like, he's waiting for me to get a foil hat and be talking, but it just all boils down to the same thing. And I feel like there is a agenda of keeping humans at their lowest form, whether it be through diet, whether it be psychologically, whether it be in that way. And I think it's really important to just be aware of what you eat. That's it. So if you're having food that has been covered in pesticides, sure, just as long as you're aware. What gets me angry and upset is when people don't know. I didn't know that. And then also with going vegan, there's so much stuff that I was in the early days caught off guard. I was like, how is Ghost Pops not vegan?
Why is there milk in everything?
And why do Ghost Pops fuck with our emotions, and then it's vegan and they're not vegan? And
yes. All the time. So yeah, I think, people are fair to do the same thing as me. I still every now and then, back before my spiritual journey, I'll get festivals and I'll take drugs and all of that. And I'm fully aware what these do, but it's my choice. And I get that with people. You're fully aware what this does and you do it, cool. But what I'm worried about is the majority that have no idea. And so health has never been a prominent.
But I guess also what we were getting to was in your personal self, like you mentioned, so you advocate doing yoga.
Yes.
That's a good health thing.
Yeah.
You wake up at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So in your, and maybe we can reframe it what do you do in terms of overall health
care,
and wellness
self-care.
For yourself? You don't have to write prescriptions for people, but what works for you, basically.
Yeah, okay. No,
especially knowing, coming from, the background of your bipolar diagnosis and all of that, obviously mental health plays a big role, which
Definitely.
I'm sure yoga and spirituality plays a huge role.
Okay, no, thank you for rephrasing that. I think for me, what's really important is to be able to show up for yourself. That is a thing that people don't realize is a huge component of health. And me waking up at 4 a.m. or doing my meditation, is just to know that there's someone who has my back no matter what is changes my life, and it does so much for your mental health. Because you constantly get into a position where you think you're alone, and especially if you feel when you do things that you shouldn't be doing, you're really attacking yourself. And that messes with your mental health. So for me, I like having a practice that shows that I can rely on myself. And then if I can't, the food that I eat, I need to know exactly what it is, where it comes from, and why I'm doing it. And I'm very rooted in Ayurvedic practices, which I guess is health. And again, a lot of what I do, as you're pointing out, is health. I just don't see it that way because I've taken for granted just the lifestyle. But with Ayurveda, they have a belief where if you can't put it in your body, you shouldn't put it on your skin, for example. And that's the ethos we have here with all our products and cosmetics. Like, it's fine, a baby can accidentally get into your products and eat it, and it's going to spit it out, but it's not going to be in any harm. And I think those are practices that people should be a lot more aware of. Like, ingredient list. If it's more than 5 ingredients, like, what are we doing? Like, it's not necessary. And also, if you don't recognize, like, if it's an EHO or stabilizers, and we take those for granted as just, oh no, that's normal. Look at what you're consuming in your body. Show up for yourself. Do movement. It's so important. Like, I don't like the gym. I don't like working. I'm super lazy. But I'm strong and I'm flexible, and that's why yoga works so well with me, and I'm lucky. If you find a practice, if it be walking, if it be doing some form of movement that gets the blood rushing and your body stretching, please do it, because it's so important, because emotions get stuck in our body and lead to illnesses. So that's why you find that people cure themselves when they go of cancer, when they go on a spiritual journey, because it's psychological, and a huge part of it is psychological. So those are the kind of tips I guess I would put on that health. But I think the main thing is just awareness, and just love yourself. If you love yourself, just by virtue of that, everything you do will be healthy.
That's cool.
That's a very good point.
I heard about Ayurvedic medicine and eating a lot when I visited India. And I was told also this, I mean, I don't understand it very well, but I just wanted to ask a question, maybe you know, is the idea of like hot foods and cold foods and stuff. So I was told that because I'm can be quite an intense person and struggle with anxiety and stuff like that, that I have like a hot body or something. Not don't mean that in any weird way.
He's a sexy man.
But like that if you have that, then I should be eating cold foods.
Yeah.
And then there's this idea of foods that contain heat and contain cold, not to do with temperature.
Yeah.
But I didn't really fully get it.
Yeah.
Is that included in your understanding of Ayurveda, and how does
definitely. So Ayurveda is the oldest medicine system, and Chinese medicine and Western medicine is based on that. And that's from understanding, you know, when they say the digestive area is your second brain, it literally, if anything, is your first brain. It's more important than the other one. And it's, in Ayurveda, they believe that we can be broken down, everything, humans, animals, activities can be broken down into doshas. So it's fire, earth, water, ether, wind, you know, that sort of vibe. And for example, my dosha is wind. So you'll find that vatas, like me, are usually like small frame, skinny. We get cold very easily. We don't eat that much. We've got like, you know, the characteristics that they show, like we don't sweat. That's a huge part of it as well. And in that case, if I get cold easy and I'm too skinny, I have an imbalance. So as an imbalance, which is what you were going on to, if you're a Pitta, which is fire energy, and you have an imbalance, it means you've got too much.
What did you say? Pitta?
Pitta.
That's so funny.
It's
like my name.
Yes, yeah. So it's Pitta.
Okay.
Pitta, so that's fire. So if you have that imbalance, it means you've got too much fire. And that's usually type A personalities or people who really have a lot of energy. So you need to pacify that with the counter. So with me, I'm Vata. So instead of eating salads that are Vata, so green, leafy greens are Vata energy, wind. All that does, it gets me bloated, so it's actual wind in your body. So I need more grounding food. So I need food like potatoes and things that come from the ground. I need hot food, nothing cold, nothing dry like crackers and all of that. But on the opposite side, you'll get a kapha, which is earth energy. And those are people who are usually quite big boned and quite slow and easy. And also their temperament also will be quite slow and easy. So your mind can have a different dosha than your body. So you could have a wind, like creative, earthy, spacey mind, but be very kapha and earthy in your body. And it's really about finding foods that help you come to balance and union. So with you, with the fire and everything, it'll be no chilies. No hot drinks, no alcohol, more salads, more, plain rice and all of that. And that puts you in alignment. And when you're in alignment, then all your doshas. So in alignment, we should all have our doshas equally spread out and active in that way. It's
Cool.
been life-changing.
It's really interesting.
No more chili, Pete.
I don't know about that. I really love curry like so much and coffee.
No one is so
That's
angry.
what exactly. That's what steams you up.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not. Don't drink alcohol or
Yeah,
anything like that.
yeah,
which,
yeah.
Imagine how grumpy you'd be.
Exactly. I'm the same. For me, I love like a light snack. Like give me a smoothie in the morning, keep it moving. No, I need cooked oats and porridge, and usually it's that resistance because that you have to jump over because chances are the things that you like in Ayurveda, the things you shouldn't be doing.
like unlearning habits and stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
So, what future plans do you and Anesu have for the Nest Space?
Oh, we're so excited. So, I've always been against this narrative of, keep your plans secret, because people are gonna see what you're doing or you'll put pressure on yourself. No, manifestation is completely opposite. We speak it out into you. That's how this came to being. So we're very, very happy to share our plans. So from now, what we want to do is we're busy shopping for land. So we're looking out in the Val or, we were looking at Machalis, but the Val seems to be calling us more. And we want to be going to like farming, permaculture, but have a yoga retreat center.
Cool.
So, so really tap into the tourist market of having people coming to South Africa to do the yoga teacher training with us. We already have yoga teacher training starting next year that we'll be doing here, but now we'd like to move it to the retreat center, allow other forms of practices in the wellness and holistic space to rent out the place, have our garden, so we'd like to supply shops and people with organic veggies and all of that, and also getting like a backpackers vibe, so like an eco village on a very small scale, just starting with the farm, but that benefits the community and all of that.
That
That
sounds amazing.
I can't wait to visit.
Yeah.
It's manifest. I need your guys' help with this.
Yeah, sure.
Sounds incredible.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Exciting. So when we're recording this, it's still the end of 2019, although if you're listening to this, it will already be 2020. But how would you sum up 2019 and what are you looking forward to for next year, for 2020?
Wow, that's a big one, hey? I'll sum up 2019 as being really being about alignment. As soon as you align to your beliefs, your practices, everything, then you sort of, your path sort of is forged. Everyone gets confused of, I don't know what my purpose is and what. Don't start with those abstract ideas of what your purpose is. Just start aligning with your beliefs and your habits, and your purpose will open up. So that's what it's been in 2020. Is a tough one for me because I'm at a bit of a crossroads that I'll just let you guys know about. I'm heavily into my spirituality, more so than most yogis that you'll see, just because of the different practices I've done. And I'm also I've got the energy to start businesses and do that. So I'm not sure, like, do I go on that journey where I just want to go meditate and and learn innate knowledge by myself for months at a time, or do I use my practices in 2020 to start building communities and all of that? So I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing in 2020. It's again, it seems like my beliefs are being contradicted because I believe in non-attachment and I believe in, letting go and being abundant and held, but I'm also accumulating stuff and attaching myself. Like if anything happens to the nest, I'm like, oh my God, and that's not the kind of, and I don't know if there's a place for someone in this world right now. I'm still trying to figure out. So 2020 is definitely about solitude. I need to be alone for a while and I need to figure some things out, and not in a negative way. Yeah.
Cool. And how do we struggle with this a lot, but how do you stay hopeful for the future? Like, are you optimistic about our future as a species? Do you think we have a chance of saving the planet and making the world a better place? Or is it like too far gone and we just...
Definitely not. I think the power of love is incredible. I think just by interacting with people like you, so that's why I said for me, what keeps my higher vibrational frequencies is just vibrating on that level with people. And the facts that I think they said, you guys might know better, like it takes 20% or something tipping point to change a whole idea. So we don't need the whole world. to be on our, we just need a certain amount of people, and I'm 100% sure we can achieve that. It's even without getting investment for the space, people who are nowhere near vegan were like, oh, we can see this is where it's going. You know, this is definitely the movement, and that gives me hope. Speaking to people who have been looking for a space like this tells me that and also seeing I call evil corporations jumping onto the bandwagon gives me idea that, okay, you're fighting a losing fight here. And now it's our job. Isn't about whether the world is going to go vegan or whatever. It's like how we then make it not just about veganism, because it's that intersectionality thing. Okay, so we have 1,000 soy patties in the restaurants and everything, but there's also an issue with that.
Yeah.
You know,
like
so
what about monoculture?
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, there's an upcase in cashews because of the vegan diets, and you see where they come from. So again, I don't think we should be distracted by veganism, and we should always come down to we're about freedom and liberation. And until that is achieved, it's just dressed up.
I often find it funny when people speak about like, oh, you know, we have enough food to feed 10 million people. If everyone just went vegan, no one would be hungry. Not realizing that's not how capitalism works. Even if everyone went vegan, now you're talking about food distribution and stuff. The rich still don't care about the poor. Why would they distribute their plant-based foods to people like who are struggling, you know? So
they'll just use the extra land to build some other corporations
Exactly.
or something to exploit more people.
So I love how you are thinking about all of it.
Yeah. I think it's a bit, they want us to believe, just with sorry, it almost seems like I'm going off topic, but you know how every world title is being held, like in pageantry, is held by a black woman right now. And it's almost as if they're like, okay, see, and appease. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, we haven't even begun to achieve our liberation as black women. You giving us a title of and calling us beautiful on a world stage does not take away the fact that we are seen as ugly in your magazines and books and narrative every day. And that's the thing. Just because KFC is going vegan and it's going to bring more plant-based food does not mean that we are free. If anything, it actually muffles us a bit more.
Exactly.
You know?
Like you said, distraction, definitely,
It
and
is.
appeasement. Just there you go. There's your little win. Now carry on with life.
Exactly.
Let's keep exploiting
Exactly.
everyone.
Exactly.
And telling people we are more ethical when really, like, you know, say for example, I read a statement by the CEO of Burger King that he said they're selling more meat than they ever have since introducing vegan options. And it's something that a lot of vegans don't understand. They think like a vegan burger being sold means a meat burger not being sold.
Yeah.
When actually it's just Burger King saying, hold on, there's a whole new market we haven't catered for.
Let's bring the vegans in as well.
Sell all the same options we were and cater.
Exactly.
You know?
And I can understand them making more meat because if I've got good friends. So if we're in a group of 5 and we're looking for a place and I'm the only vegan, they're going to find a place that caters to both. If it's just a meat place, it's not even, so they've lost 4 customers. So it makes sense that now if you've got a vegan, then we are going to go to that place. So that's a market of meat eaters that you wouldn't have gotten.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's what people don't seem to understand.
Yeah.
So speaking about kind of collective justice and liberation and all of that, are there any local organizations or projects that you think people should be supporting that don't really get spoken about or aren't really well known?
Yeah, so a project really close to my heart is Kundalini Africa Rising. It was started by my teacher, Ravi Ita Rousseau. And the story behind her is she was quite... Kundalini is run by an organization called 3HO. So yoga is also capitalized in every way. It's trademarked, like you can't, you know, to get a yoga qualification is like 50 grand or something. So again, that also creates that separation. After teaching, sorry.
It's
okay. After
Just
teaching,
destroying the whole cafe.
my fire is just
so she, after teaching for years, she kept looking into her classes, and it was the higher she got, it was just still middle-aged white women in her classes. And Kundalini Yoga is a powerful technology that focuses on the chakra system and believes, as you guys saw in the classes, I kept saying pull, root lock, tighten, anal, genital, and navel muscles. What I'm asking you to do is, because our belief is that your energy, your potential, your life, this is why for the womb, the woman, this is where creation is, that is power, even for the man. You want to move that energy away from lust and sexual desires all the way up through your chakra system so you get a higher consciousness. That technology has enabled me to be able to be brave enough to make these sort of decisions, like start a shop, speak about getting land. That is something that the youth in South Africa definitely need, but they don't have access to it. So what she did is she kept asking the powers that be, can we get more scholarships for people of color? We need this isn't reflecting the society. And she kept hitting a wall, and almost to a point where it became offensive. So she broke away from 3HO local and started Kundalini Africa Rising, which is tirelessly working on sponsoring people, yogis of color. I think right now we've sponsored about over 40 or 50 in the last 2 years. Wow. And so, it boils on to that because in our classes we're taught about zero waste, and she also creates her own module. She sticks to the plan of what she's supposed to teach and then adds the stuff. Like, please make the connection between you wanting Ahimsas and wanting the world to be a better place and eating meat or using plastic and all of that. So that's an organization, because as part of our contract, if you're sponsored by them, you then have to give back because we're community based. So we teach yoga to kids in Hillbrow. So you're soon going to see a generation that, been like, I've been doing yoga since I was 3 years old, and they're black girls and boys and stuff. So yeah, that's something I really want people to know about, and it's working on pure volunteers. And because it's yoga and this Christian monopoly, it's very difficult for us to get funding on a big scale. So all we can rely on is people. You can read more about them on the CAR website, Kundalini Africa Rising. We have OKYC, which is Open Kundalini Yoga classes, which are donation based all around the city. We're also going to be doing them here every last month. So it's really about making it accessible, because one of our main things is social justice is a spiritual practice. And
that's amazing.
That's cool. Literally what we run. And so during the Alex protests, we were there in all our white kundalinis and talking about yoga, and people were like, but it's about the Alex shutdown. And again, we were like, it's not a difference. We are about the liberation of people. Mm-hmm. They come through to, a lot of my yogis come through to the vegan marches that we do. And I think the community is really showing that it's about intersectionality.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Banesa mentioned doing stuff in Hillbrow, which is pretty significant, because for those who don't know, Hillbrow is an area in Johannesburg that's largely made up of immigrants. It's regarded as very dangerous and a very underprivileged area. And then Alex is short for Alexander Township, which is a large area of underprivileged people living in informal and government housing.
Just next door, the most expensive place in Sandton.
Exactly.
Ultimate relative deprivation.
Yo, you should see the actual drone footage of Sandton and Alex. It's just it's almost like in Brazil. It's exactly the same.
Yeah, maybe we should put up a screenshot of that on our
I could actually send you, because we've got it as well. So I'll send that to you as well.
That would be great. Yeah, so it's cool to hear about projects being done in those areas.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to speak about or add that we haven't mentioned or that you haven't touched on?
I think you guys have definitely touched on everything. I think I just want to add a bit more about spirituality with the price tag. I think I am of the belief of this anonymous quote that, if it's not accessible to the poor, it's neither radical nor revolutionary. And you can't call what you're doing revolutionary or radical if it's not. And so a lot of the things that I've spoken about, like Vipassana, the 10-day silent retreat, you go there. It's in Worcester. They feed you. They give you a place to stay. They take care of you. And at the end, you give a donation of what you can. And if it's not monetary, then you can give your time at a later stage when you're able to. That is the kind of spiritual practices we're talking about. At the Nest Space, it's $120 per class, but we have moon ceremonies that are donation-based. We have gong ceremonies that are donation-based. So I think if anyone is trying to do something that is impactful, you really do need to open it up to as many people as possible, and removing the money element is really, really radical.
Such a good point.
Really good points. Yeah.
Amazing. So thank you so much for speaking to
thanks,
us,
Banesa.
This is amazing.
Really awesome.
Best interview ever.
Before we kind of close off, where can people find you? Where can they find information about the Nest Space, the location, any social media info?
Websites, that stuff.
So I'll start with the Nest Space. So we are located on 14 Glen Eagle Road, Greenside, and we're just above Duke's Burgers. And you can find us. We are the Nest Space ZA on both Instagram, Twitter, and the nestspace.co.za is our website. You can get information. And then I've got Organic Nomad, and that's where I do my consultancy, and it's a more one-on-one sort of healing processes and retreats. And I'm organic_nomad on Instagram, Organic Nomad on Facebook. And then if you want to see just how, because I think my ability to be able to reach as many people as I can is because they can see that I'm not just a hippie doing prayer and meditating on the side. Like, I'm still at the biggest concerts and doing worldly things. So Be Creative is a display of the integration of wellness and veganism, and also just having to live a normal life. If you look at Organic Nomad, you'd think I'm just a little spiritual floating thing who doesn't have to worry about bills and stuff. But Be Creative shows the hustle.
That's cool. We'll post links to all of these in the show notes as well, so people can find it.
And it's such an honor to be here. Like, I think what you guys are doing is so important. Like, it's so important. And I think this could be like the base of everything else, and it's a nice like portal of information. And I'll definitely be sharing this wide and far.
Awesome.
Thanks, Banesa.
Thank you.
So thanks again, Banesa. It's been amazing, and we'll definitely leave links to everything and all that good stuff. But until next time,
Love and liberation.